Maybe you're starting to explore a career as an appraiser and want to know if now is the right time to get started. Or you're measuring your career span in decades and want to find out more about the latest apps, technology, and resources that can make your life and work a bit easier. Get the answers and insight you need with Beyond the Numbers, a podcast from McKissock Learning. I'm Julie Mollendorp-Floyd, course and curriculum developer and instructor here at McKissock. Join me and an expert guest each week as we dive into the topics that matter most to appraisers, from industry and education news to marketing and other insights to help you run your business more effectively. If you'd like to stay at the forefront of appraisal news, boost your career, or just learn more about the profession, subscribe to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hope to see you there soon. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal. I'm your host, Julie Mollendorp-Floyd, a certified general appraiser in Missouri and Kansas, and course and curriculum developer and instructor for McKissock. Today, we wrap up our series on what's happening in the commercial sector with our favorite commercial guru, Rich Correll. Rich is the principal at Correll Commercial Real Estate Services, a firm providing appraisal and consulting solutions for commercial properties for financing, litigation, and estate reporting. Today, as part of our Focus on Commercial series, we're talking about thinking outside the box in the commercial sector. We're going to tackle every appraiser's favorite topic, the weird ones. So, Rich, welcome back. Good to have you again.
Thanks.
When I say the weird ones, what comes to mind?
Well, weird isn't always just the property.
True.
Weird is also the experience that can occur. As I recall, one where I was going to the Bahamas to look at a portfolio of properties for a client.
That sounds fun.
And, I'm on the airplane, and probably everybody knows this except me. They hand a form out to say, are you going here on pleasure or business? And I said business because I was.
Right.
When I checked that box, all the vacationers were shuttled into their vacation mode, and I was arrested for not having a business permit to operate as an appraiser in the Bahamas on their island. So that was the official third world detainment experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it wasn't a weird property yet because I couldn't even get to the properties after being arrested and detained by the Bahamian police.
So you're here with us, so obviously you didn't get a jail sentence. So how did that work out?
My client came to pick me up, and he had the relationships necessary to pave the way for me to get going.
Wow. Was that traumatic for you?
Not really.
No?
What was traumatic, though, if we're going to talk traumatic,
yes,
let's go. We're going to shift into downtown Chicago, a property that was foreclosed upon and boarded up. And I was there with the lawyer, who was a young woman. And I said, hey, the door, the key where we were going to get in, we had access and it was all the power was shut off. I said, hey, this is unlocked.
Oh, no.
You know the story there. We've all been there. And I told the lawyer, I said, this is not a secured property. This is really not a great idea. We're in an urban market. We're in a vertical property where the power shut off. Well, she had a flashlight and said, no, we got my boss. We have to look at this. And I'm like, okay, we can look at it. I'll go into it. So we're trudging through here, and it's like a horror TV show. Every crack you hear, you think someone's behind you, and
something from The Walking Dead, waiting for zombies to pop out.
Right, and all I'm thinking is, I can't get a good picture of anything.
No,
so of course I'm in appraiser mode. I can't measure anything. It's hard to know, but I'm just thinking it's in terrible condition. It's vacant. Like I'm writing the report in my mind.
Right, as we do.
We go up and up and up. We get to the top floor. And it's a crack den.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So there's needles everywhere and debris. It's totally trashed. Luckily, there's not somebody that's there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
The lawyer,
very lucky.
Right. And I was really irritated at that point that we were in that position. The lawyer had a panic attack and started hyperventilating because of this. Goodness. So, so I finally got her calmed down. I made sure there's nobody coming in. There's nobody here. We called the police. We called the property owner through the client, law firm to say, hey, we're leaving. You have to secure the property.
Absolutely.
This sort of thing. Moral to the story is for all the appraisers, residential, commercial, don't go into empty buildings that are broken into. It's not worth it. It's not going to be good. Just wait it out, bill for the inspection that you couldn't do and go the next day or whenever they can secure it or clear it. It seems to never work out great.
I say that all the time. Trust your gut, trust your instincts. If it feels like it's going to be unsafe, why take the chance?
Exactly.
A lot of times, if you're in an area, and more urban or suburban area, you can call the non-emergency police number and say you're here to inspect a property. And frequently, if they have people working that aren't busy, they'll come out and clear it for you. I've had that done on residential properties, but you only have to encounter someone who is squatting or that you're not expecting. You only have to run into that once before it really leaves a stamp on your brain, and you don't want to do that again.
Right. And, for commercial, we have less issues with it being occupied with people.
Right.
But there's still plenty of issues in the commercial property arena that we see that are, challenging, sometimes disturbing. We just had a deal where, I love the bait and switch stories, and this is one of those.
Okay.
A lender hires us to appraise a property, and it's a basic commercial property in the country.
Okay.
And we see, we look on the Google, and we see it's got this, big grain silo, which is not a problem. It's not an issue at all. We get to the property. The grain silo is converted into a residence.
Oh, my goodness.
Right. So it's this really cool vertical grain silo residence.
Sure.
And we are the commercial appraisers. So that really stinks, right?
Yeah.
And we just dealt with it. Mostly, appraisers are pretty adaptable. Mm-hmm. At least we are. We say, it's just easier to just appraise it than try to go back, halt the deal, either cancel it or restructure it for a different fee. It's just, that's too exhausting. We just assume appraise it and move forward and move on with life.
So did you find 3 other grain silo houses that sold within the last 6 months, within a mile? Or how'd you handle it?
I would love to say yes on that.
Sarcasm.
That sounds so good. That sounds so good. Yes, we found 3 grain silo houses as comps right down the street, same type.
Sure.
Perfect. Yeah. No,
sure.
that was a tough problem to navigate around, but
sure.
Sometimes the properties are the issue. The what happens at the property is the issue. It can be all kinds of things. When you talk about the weird ones or the nightmare properties, so many things come to mind, but nothing disastrous. I mean, when I was in training as an appraiser, we were all out there as young appraisers. It was with a bank, and we're all in training mode. And we were looking at a house. They thought it would be good training to take us to kind of the rundown district, right, in LA. And that's fine. That's fine. I mean, it's good to check out different properties. And suddenly the trainers, they're all panicking, and they're like, everybody's got to go. We got to get in the car. I didn't know what was happening. It turns out later that they found a dead body in the backyard.
Oh, goodness.
So, so they screwed us out of there. But, that links to then my forward experience when I was appraising this industrial property that had a proprietary technology for medical waste disposal.
Okay.
And that all sounds very, that sounds good or interesting. So I appraised this property, and when I went to do the inspection, there was only one person there, and they basically, ushered me in, and I was able to walk around. But the place had a horrific odor. You could
Okay.
barely stand it, and I barely could stay in there long. Like I walked through, I took pictures, I was out of there. And it
Sure.
turns out that, and this is right out of like a zombie apocalypse movie, it turns
Mm-hmm.
out these medical disposal trucks will come at any hour of the night, dump all these body parts
Oh,
and
no.
surgery debris in this big machine that was the proprietary technology, and it would go through this incineration grinding process, and it created the odor of doom
Oh, my
in the
gosh.
facility. Yeah, the worst ever. Yeah, and when I
Wow.
interviewed the broker, I found out that he walked in there and he threw up the minute he walked out. He threw
I
up
can imagine.
on the site. Whereas I was like, I dumped my clothes off immediately because it was just terrible.
Oh, my gosh.
There should be higher fees for that. That's the moral to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was
Stinky properties should incur more of a fee,
yeah,
I would
and
guess.
and and of course, when you're always wearing the appraiser hat, you're like, this thing's worth less. Like this is
As
an
it,
issue,
yeah,
right? This is
as
a
it stood.
contamination element, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
and that applies when we look at conversions of like vet clinics, and we've
Mm-hmm.
seen those where we appraise a vet's place or a boarding facility, and if it's being acquired for another use, I think there's a factor there. The
Mm-hmm.
conversion of use is also a cleaning and making sure it's disinfecting or odor free
Sure.
in that conversion. So appraisers deal with a lot of different stuff.
We
I
do.
think that's the exciting part, right? Everything's a
Yep.
new day. There's new stuff. That's what we like about commercial, and I would say even residential. But in commercial, it can be a whole bunch of different property types in a single week.
Right. And I say to people who are looking at this profession that our days are never the same. And just when you think you've seen it all, you haven't. And never to
Yes.
drive by a property and say something, off the cuff like, I'd hope I never have to appraise that, because you will always get that assignment if you speak that. I call it appraiser karma. You speak that into the
Yeah.
universe, it will come back to you. So that leads me
Yeah.
to, I want to know, what is the most out of the box property that you have ever tackled?
Hmm. The most out of the box. Well, one that I would say beat me, and I can't think of any one other one that beat me,
Okay.
is a an agricultural processing property
All right.
that's 1 million square feet.
Oh, wow.
It took 3 days to inspect.
Mm,
It had so many specialty elements, it's beyond belief. It was on hundreds of acres. It had rail lines. It was basically a city.
wow.
And
Yeah.
I was just overwhelmed by it. I mean, it got me. Like I said, the value, it's part of a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise on Earth.
Yeah.
So who's going to buy it? It would have to be bought by the biggest food conglomerate on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are they going to pay? So that's your sales thinking, right?
Right.
Forget about income. It's a giant user property.
Absolutely.
Cost. How many billions would it cost to create that thing in today's
A
dollars?
million square feet. Yeah.
I think the MVS book might start burning if I tried to calculate it. It's
It
just
might.
it'd be
It
the biggest
might.
cost approach ever. So at some point, I guess there's got to be a tipping point. Like if you build the
Right.
biggest thing that exists in the country, and it's so specialized in what it
Sure.
is, how does the appraiser handle the value? And it's handleable. I'm just saying, I
It
ended up
is.
hiring two specialty appraisers to tackle it in pieces. So I said, you handle this element, because it was another division on the same property. And I said, you handle this element. I'll be the review appraiser. I'm taking myself out of the driver's seat. I think my skill set starts to break down when you've got like a 100-page cost approach. I don't have the stamina anymore. That's for those guys.
Well, it reminds me of that old joke. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Yeah. And so that's how you tackled this property. Yeah. You took it one bite at a time, and you brought in backup. And appraisers, we're notoriously famous for our egos, and well served. We need to have a strong ego in order to have an opinion and defend it. But we're frequently afraid to admit maybe that we thought we had it handled, but now we need to call in for help. And so in that situation, could you have done it? Probably. But should you have, under the original circumstances, probably bringing in the help was your best angle. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's a lesson worth repeating. We tend to be, solo guys and girls out there. We tend to do it ourselves. And that's a good skill set. And I think it's part of being an appraiser. It's important to be resourceful and to be able to write a report. Mm-hmm. However, there is a limit. And, when you think about competency, USPAP, these things, and serving the client, you might have to bring in other resources, other help. And it's really kind of fun when you bring in other professionals. I've hired residential people to come in and work with us on projects. M&E, machinery and equipment people, we've come in. I just hired an environmental consultant to advise on something, which is a conversion of an industrial facility to a job training for high school kids.
Wow.
Yeah. And I read the environmental stuff, and I thought, I don't really get all this. Like, I've heard these terms, I just don't know the implications. And under a school use and mandate, they might have a higher standard. I need someone who's a pro to review all that and advise on that. And obviously, we never deal with environmental other than to say, yes, we understand environmental reports have been done. Sure. Or as a residential, you might say, hey, black mold, we saw something, but we're not experts. It needs to be tested. You guys probably deal with radon too, and maybe those reports. So
understanding to know what you don't know, and call for the expert when needed. Absolutely.
Know what you don't know. Exactly. So, but I would just say one thing. I would caution you that one time I did appraise the wrong house when I was a residential appraiser. There were two houses.
It's happened to the best of us.
And I got the address. I don't know. I mean, there were people working on each one.
Right.
So I just got the address a digit off, and I did the whole walkthrough and appraisal of a vacant house that was under renovation, and it was actually the house next door.
Great.
That's an embarrassing story, right?
It is, but it's happened to most all of us, especially when you're talking new construction. That can happen. So one of the terms I like to use is a sleeper. It looked easy from the jump, but it got messy as you got into it. I'm working on one right now that was couched to me as a large acreage parcel, mostly paved, and was used, is being rented to a car dealership for car storage. Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward, right? Not too crazy?
Sounds okay so far.
Till I found out that the 28 acres had 18 acres of underground caves.
Oh my gosh.
And the owner had permanently affixed some $1 million charging stations to charge electronic vehicles on the property.
Oh, that's a big mess.
So what started out as a pretty straightforward acreage with, capitalization of the income, it turned into a whole lot more. And I realized that I was not competent to tackle those underground caves and their impact. And so I did outsource and worked in conjunction with another appraiser, but it started out easy, but it was a sleeper. Do you have one like that was a sleeper?
Probably 100. I'm trying
one this week.
I'm trying to pick one out of the box. I mean, now I'm starting to think about so many. I would say that's a big time bait and switch there, though, that you just said.
Sure.
It's always happening. Sometimes it's relatively minor. Other times it's not minor. Recently we went out to look at a retail property, freestanding.
Okay.
And, as we're talking to the owner or the manager, he says, well, do you guys, are you ready to go over here to this one?
Okay.
We're like, well, that's not really included. He's like, oh, yeah, these are on the same piece of land. So we protectively went to the second property because you don't want to have to go back. We did the inspection and the photographs for that second one just to go back and say, okay, who's right, who's wrong here? It turns out the on-site guy was right. So they wanted both.
Okay.
So we did say that's an additional scope and it will be an additional fee.
Sure.
So we were able to navigate through that. That was a couple of weeks ago. And usually we do resolve it without exiting the deal because, we're always cognizant that people have been waiting around for the appraisal to get started and be done for a certain time frame.
They have. Yeah.
And we don't want to be the cause of resetting that if we can navigate through it successfully. But in a commercial especially, I want to tell you that you are almost always adjusting to the realities of the real world. For example, we appraised 2 resort campground properties, and they run them as one, even they're in 5 miles apart. So they're individual assets that are operated as a single financial entity. Okay. But a lender would want values on each one.
Right.
So we have to now separate perception as to what's the value of one, how much, if you and I bought one of them, how much would it cost us to operate the one?
Versus
and would
both.
we be, is there an influence to having both and having tenants, occupants roll over when the one is full, they have control, and they're leasing them together in marketing, et cetera, to the same people. So we're frequently doing that navigation, allocation, separating the assets. But another thing that's interesting, maybe not a nightmare property, but when I wrote a book on self-storage, which is the main storage, I got so knowledgeable about that class that I had to start declining assignments.
Good problem to have.
Hey, right, but they would say, hey, can you tell me what to do here? And I was thinking, I can tell you exactly what to do because I know the numbers on all my other clients.
Sure.
And I can really tell you what to do. And I know what I could do, but I can't do it. Like I've got to
stay confidential. Sure.
And there is something to be said for that in commercial, maybe residential. If you become too far into a class of real estate, too good at it, you might be exceeding the market. You might be doing more than what the market is able to do. And usually we're hired to read markets, not delve into making them very specifically. And now we do advisory, and that's a different hat, or consulting. But in terms of appraisal, even residential, if you knew that luxury build market because your husband or brother-in-law was in it to a deep level, and some guy wants to get a loan, you might know so much that you're actually going outside of your sort of parameters as forming an opinion, right?
Sure.
So not a nightmare thing, but sort of interesting.
No, but that's good to keep in mind. Specialize, but understand what borders on the confidential versus what is your knowledge as an appraiser. That's a good point.
Right.
Very good point.
Right.
So we appreciate your time and your contributions, Rich. Your opinions on the commercial sector are always valued as we move through our 4-part series highlighting changes to the commercial side of the appraisal profession. I'm Julie Molendorp-Floyd, and it's been a pleasure to have you as our guest. And remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform. Your support is always appreciated, and thanks for stopping by. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Beyond the Numbers. If you'd like to stay at the forefront of appraisal news, boost your career, or just learn more about the profession, be sure to subscribe to Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for stopping by.